Hi, Kunal. Hi,
Yeah, hi,
Nikunj.
yeah. Very good afternoon to all of you.
Good afternoon.
Hello, Anthony.
Thank you, Shom. Thank you very much. Good evening, friends. On behalf of corporate professional, on my own behalf, I extend a very warm welcome to our this 134th webinar on stringent disclosure requirement under Regulation 30 of LODR regulation. Friends, as you are aware, SEBI has made significant changes to the disclosure requirement under Regulation 30 of the SEBI LODR regulation. Provision relating to the disclosure of material events and Schedule 3 have undergone several changes, and with the introduction of quantitative criteria for determining materiality, respond to the market rumors, and the addition to new disclosure events. So this particular webinar today aims to provide insight into these recent changes and their implication for listed entities. When you read something, it has different interpretation. When you implement something, it has a different interpretation. And when you are implementing, then you have to be 100% sure, because whatever you are writing, it's a law for your side, or the stock exchange and regulator and the investor will see that point. So today, this new regime of LODR, or specifically Regulation 30, we want to discuss threadbare, and we want to identify what is the SEBI's intention, what they want to communicate, and how the corporate should implement this. So today we have invited the people from the corporate. So I extend a very hearty welcome to all our learned speakers to today's webinar. First, I'll welcome Savitri Parekh. She is the company secretary and compliance officer of Reliance Industry. She has over 28 years experience. She has worked in various sectors, including manufacturing, outsource, service, private equity, media, pharmaceutical, textile, and chemicals. She is a specialist editor of the Ramaiah Guide of Companies Act and general editor of MC Bhandari Guide of Company Law Procedures. I welcome Savitri. She is joining shortly. Then we have a Kishore Konal, is a company secretary and compliance officer of KEI Industries Limited. He has over 18 years of experience in managing secretarial and legal and financial matters, and worked in various listed companies. I welcome Kishore for this program, and your understanding or your knowledge will definitely help the participants, and we will come out with the correct interpretation of things from your angle. Then I welcome Nikunj, is a company secretary and lawyer, Bayer Corp Science Limited. He has over 18 years of rich experience in IPO, corporate restructuring, merger and acquisition, joint venture, board management, intercompany transaction, and compliance with corporate law. I welcome Nikunj, and your experience in this industry and your experience in IPO and listed companies will definitely work. And because you have done so many corporate restructuring, merger and acquisition, joint venture, so your input will help all the participants, that they will understand the nitty-gritty, because any information, any development you have to report. So that will be very useful, your input. I welcome you, Nikunj. Then we have Mr. Vikash Goel. He's senior manager and assistant company secretary, NTPC Limited. He has over 19 years of rich experience in handling compliance, including listing and compliance, insider trading compliance, and IEP related matters. And because Vikas is from the government PSU, so his input will also helpful to all of us to understand their part of understanding and their part of problems which they will face and in this implementation. So I welcome Vikas for this program. Then I have Anjali Agrawal. She is a partner and head capital market service corporate profession. I welcome Anjali. And then Ankit Singhi is a head corporate affairs and compliance corporate profession. I welcome Ankit for this. So friends, the program structure we have made very interactive. First, what will happen? Ankit will give a presentation, and each topic, each regulation which they have prescribed, he will show, present, and new and issues in this, and we will ask from all the panelists, whatever questions Ankit is raising, that your view and any other questions which you think this problem will also come in this implementation of this regulation, we will discuss threadbare. And then we'll take up questions from the public, and then we'll move to the second part and the third part and fourth part, whatever it is. So without wasting much time, because this topic is very interesting and interactive and people are too much curious to know. So I'll request Ankit to give his presentation, and then after each topic point, we will discuss the way I have talked to you. Over to you, Ankit.
Thank you, sir, and good evening to everyone. I hope I am audible.
Yes, you are audible.
So today we are here to discuss the recent changes in the Regulation 30. I feel in last couple of years, the recent changes in Regulation 30 and other changes that have just been notified by SEBI in June this month are the most significant changes in terms of whatever changes the LODR has undergone in last couple of years. And today we are here to discuss just one set of changes, which forms sort of the larger family of changes, is with respect to changes under Regulation 30, because that has undergone a sea change in itself, and it's a topic which is sufficient enough to need a standalone webinar instead of being coupled with all other amendments as we discuss in our general discussions on the amendments in various regulations, Companies Act, otherwise. So to begin with, just to give you a brief background, the discussion paper basis which the amendments forms part of the, it was issued in November last year, and then comments were invited, basis which SEBI in its board meeting held in March this year approved the changes. The changes outlined were the broad changes that were found part of the SEBI minutes of press release that was put on the SEBI website. And then now the final amendment notification was issued on June 14, 2023. And the amendments will probably be effective from 30 days from the date of notification, that is 13th July 2023, in terms of the amendments which are respective to the Regulation 30. So rational, the discussion paper which was there in November 2022 outlined some key rationales why they intend to bring changes under Regulation 30T in terms of the disclosure. So the key rationales that were outlined there were that there were various numerous complaints that SEBI received in respect of inadequate or inaccurate or delayed disclosures by being done by listed entities. Then SEBI also received a lot of representations in order to issue clear guidelines to determine materiality with respect to para B and para C, because there we need to apply the criteria of materiality. And there was also there were delayed disclosures in terms of timelines within which companies were putting up disclosures to the exchanges. So these were some of the key rationale that SEBI outlined in its discussion paper before beginning to discuss the proposals that they intend to put forward, and then which have taken the shape of the regulations as part of the amendments. So materiality criteria of disclosure, as we are aware, para A doesn't need any applicability of materiality. All the events which are there needs disclosure. Para B and C, where there is a requirement to apply the criteria of materiality. There is a qualitative thresholds or criteria that the regulation itself prescribe under sub-regulation 4. There was always, these were very subjective, and companies do follow both quantitative and qualitative criteria in their materiality policy. So it can be the qualitative threshold as provided under regulation sub-regulation 4 of Regulation 30. It can be quantitative, and it can be quantitative and qualitative both. So the real game was with respect to the items enlisted in para B and those in para C, because para A was always deemed material. Look at some of the top listed entities, how they determine the materiality in terms of their materiality policy. If you see, majority of them have only outlined qualitative criteria to determine materiality for all the items falling under para B and para C. Only few of them in the likes of TCS, ITC, Infosys, among the top 10, who apart from qualitative criteria have also identified quantitative criteria. So when you have quantitative criteria outlined for a public, for any investor, analyst, it's easy to understand in what criteria or situations you will be making disclosure under para B or para C. But when it is purely qualitative, then it is resting up to the concerned persons in a company who are responsible to determine the materiality as to in what cases the disclosures will require to be made. And then there becomes a symmetry in terms of the disclosures. A company would be making a disclosure which is material for them, but B may not be, though it might be the case that an event which would be material for A would also be material for B. But in terms of any objective criteria, it was always subject and discretion of the company to determine at what stage it will deem to be a material event for that. And I think one of the fundamental reasons for SEBI to bring out the new amendments is on the basis of these quantitative criteria forming part of the policies instead of more quantitative criteria. And there is also variance in terms of what quantitative criteria, even there was quantitative criteria that were prescribed, they're also not common. Somebody use net worth as a criteria, somebody use as a net profit, somebody use as turnover, and somebody was using a mix. So there were a lot of differences in terms of criteria too. The general qualitative criteria that is there under sub-regulation 4, and these are the 3 points which is prescribed therein, that an event which is likely to result in discontinuity or alteration, or even result in significant market reaction, or which in the board's directors is of material nature. So any 3 of them can be considered by a company to determine the materiality of any event which forms part of the para B and para C. Now, as part of the amendments introduced under Regulation 30, the significant amendment that has been brought, and that was also outlined under the discussion paper, is a new quantitative criteria to determine the materiality of para B and para C. So the new quantitative criteria now takes out the subjectivity out of these ABC criteria that were there. And if a criteria is fulfilling the requirement of the quantitative materiality thresholds, then you will not be looking into the A, B, C criteria to determine whether it still is a material transaction or not. So the new materiality criteria, it says the omission of an event or information whose value or the expected impact in terms of value is lower of the 3. So first is turnover as per the audited consolidated financial statement. Last audited 2%, net worth is also 2%. In case net worth is in negative, then the net worth will not be considered as a criteria. Then average of absolute value of profit or loss after tax. Need to discuss what is absolute value, because if it's a value after tax, it's an absolute value, and ISPA also needs to be 3 audited consolidated financial statements. So first important thing to note, that all the criteria that are based on audited balance sheet, latest audited balance sheet, and all are based on consolidated financial statement. So everything has to be checked in perspective of the financial statements at the group level, not on a standalone level. Rationale behind some of the rationale that SEBI outlined is with respect to their need of combination of turnover and profit. Then there might be an event which have an impact on turnover, profit, which also ultimately impact the net profit. So then they intend to bring a optimal combination of net profit, turnover, net worth, which in some way are linked to each other. So a combination of these criteria shall form the basis to determine the disclosure requirements. So the basic issue that we will be now putting forward for all of you is this criteria sufficient, or is there a need of any additional criteria?
So now, Ankit has
Savitri ma'am has also joined, sir.
Yeah, Savitri, I think I'll ask you the first important question. This criteria which SEBI has prescribed now.
Ma'am is on mute.
Okay. You have to unmute.
Savitri, you have to unmute.
I'm sorry, if you could just repeat the question once again, please. Sorry.
Yeah. Savitri, the question is that SEBI has changed this materiality concept on this premises that there was no uniformity, and they are bringing out
the question.
This criteria. Okay.
Right.
So
right.
My first question is, what is the logic behind this, number one, and how you are finding that this three concept will solve a problem, or there are some other criteria should be added.
So I think these three criteria will be fairly comprehensive, because when you look at any number, it is either the top line or the bottom line, both of which have been covered. And 2 to 5 criteria, 2% of consolidated top line or 2% of consolidated net worth, or 5% of the average net profits for the last 3 years, I think of the matters which would get represented in figures. So this will automatically cover a very wide gamut of transactions and events. Yes, of course, this will lead to more events getting disclosed. And I would say that it's fairly comprehensive.
Okay, Nikunj, what is your view? You think there's something should be added, or these three criteria are sufficient?
Yeah, so if I may say, I mean, in terms of the comprehensiveness of the new criteria, I think they are pretty comprehensive enough. But I would even go to one more step and say that this 2% is actually, if you look from my perspective, are too stringent a norm, and therefore, as Savitri ma'am rightly mentioned, we will end up sharing many information, and also at the level of industry or the company, we will have many things going through the same filter of 2%. So 2%, according to me, is little low. But yeah, as far as your question is concerned, it's more than comprehensive.
Okay, Kishore and Vikas, you have any other additional point?
See, while I agree on the comprehensibility part, but my view is that the turnover and net worth is okay. But as far as the profitability is concerned, see, there may be certain industry which is operating in a very competitive environment. So the turnover is okay, maybe the net worth is okay, but maybe in the last 2-3 years, the company has been into the downturn, or maybe earning very less profit. In that case, the 5% criteria is very, you can say, very low, and in that case there will be a lot of disclosure. So maybe the regulator will also be overburdened with this type of disclosure, which to analyze. So that is my view.
Okay, Anjali, you have any point?
Yeah. So while my industry panelists are sharing their own views, we get this information from the friends which work in various industries. So one of the queries that was raised recently to me, the company is into losses for last 2-3 years, as a result of which the third parameter of absolute value is a negative figure. So that, as per them, is a big problem for them, that because then that would mean everything is to be reported. Every transaction is needed to be reported. But that's what I also told them. It's we have to see the ultimately the basic requirement is that it should have an impact, material impact on the price of the company or the market price of the scrip. So accordingly, one has to see the implications of a particular transaction.
Yeah, but considering they've mentioned that negative net worth will not be considered.
So
they also don't want to cover losses.
It is about
it appears that because since negative net worth is not provided to be considered for the purpose of determining the parameters,
right?
Also need not to consider losses. Only profits needs to be covered. I think Savitri ma'am can throw some light.
So Savitri, this issue is coming, and so many questions relating to this. There are two questions. One is whether the losses are there. So there is if losses are there, it is not possible that net worth will also be negative.
Yeah, it is not a case.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So in my case, my turnover is good, my net worth is positive, but losses are there continuously for 2 years or 3 years. So in that case, this is the lowest. So I have to disclose everything. This is the question Ankit, which Anjali is asking.
In my opinion, yes.
Okay. So it means that there are losses and two things are in a shape, then you have...
Because it is lower of the three criteria, every transaction would be,
Yes.
Transaction falling under Schedule 3 anything and everything then goes above the threshold.
Okay.
Not only with respect to
any reason of excluding negative net worth and including loss, though it uses the word profit or loss after tax, so intention appears to be including to loss, but then why they are excluding negative net worth? Because in most of the cases where your average net profit is at loss, then negative would definitely be in net worth negative too.
Not necessarily, Ankit.
Yeah, the reasoning is that, see, the net worth wipes out over a period of time. Maybe you have an accumulated profit, say, for so many crores, but you have started incurring losses in the, say, last 4 or 5 years. So that's why the net worth is a fair idea, but I think the profitability and the loss. So loss should not be there. And apart from that, they have used the word absolute value of the profit or loss. So what is the meaning of the absolute? So here, I don't think that they are allowing the netting off. They are saying the absolute terms, means if you are incurring a loss of say 3 crores, and in the earlier 2 years, if you have done a profit of say certain crores, so you have to add up whether the netting is allowed or not.
Okay, Savitri, what is the meaning of absolute value?
Averaging, when we have to average, we'll have to net off.
It has to be always net off.
10 minus 3 minus 2.
So then why it is absolute?
So the term absolute value, in my view, has been used to show that it is just
मैम आपका screen freeze हो रहा है.
It's not going to be a percentage, but the number is what they're referring to. Profit, it is going to be, okay, let me just see.
I think it's fine now.
Ma'am, you are on mute.
Video off for some time and then do it. Yeah. So actually, absolute value over here, what they basically are trying to mean is that the number, it is not the percentage, but the number. Because if you see in terms of turnover or net worth, they've not used this term. They're saying 5% of the average of the absolute value, which means year one, you find out the
Savitri, there's some problem with your network.
I think we'll come back on this later.
Any
5% of your net profit, year of net profit, year 3 you find out. First year you might have,
Savitri, we have lost connection in between. So Ankit, anybody can tell the meaning of absolute value?
Sir, the absolute is the number.
It's a number.
Yeah. We don't have to see any other percentage or anything. Absolute means numeric figure.
Because word absolute value of profit and loss is used.
Yes. So
okay.
we need to get it.
So I mean,
like whether it is
am I audible now?
Yeah, Savitri, audible.
Yes.
So can you repeat again about the absolute value, absolute profit, value of the ascertaining this value?
Okay, so absolute the 5% of your net profit for year 1, net profit 5% of year 2, 5% of net profit of year 3, and of those absolute values that you've already ascertained, take the average, and anything which exceeds that final figure as average is what is required to be disclosed. So which basically means you're looking at numbers and not just the percentages.
Okay, because you have any view on this?
No, sir. I was just saying that does it not go without saying? So word absolute is there in the third clause of profit or loss. But what in case of net worth or turnover? Even without saying so, we have to take the absolute figures only.
Yes, you have to.
Yes.
They have to be absolute figures. So that is why it's not clear why they have not. Why you specifically.
So if I could once again clarify on the profits. So in year 1 you've had 10%, year 2 you had 8%, and year 3 you've had let's say 20%. You could do an average of this and say that this has been your net profit in terms of turnover, and on that you find out your absolute figure. That's not the right thing to do. You ascertain your 5% of net profit of that year, keep it aside, 5% of net profit of second year, keep it in basket 2, 5% of net profit of year 3, and of those absolute.
Ma'am, but we could have used
If
these.
there is a loss in the third year, if there is a
Figures do
loss
an
in the
average,
third year, then
which is
what?
the reason I'm not based on averages, but based on 1 year's figures.
I think ma'am's
No, I
point,
have a different opinion.
I think what Savitri ma'am is saying, that we should not average out the percentage profit and then find out the absolute figure. Rather, it is vice versa.
But it has to be absolute numbers only, na? We cannot
Absolute
be.
number.
Yes.
Yeah. So I
it's
mean,
for sake of additional clarity that it has to be calculated like that only. And because it
How-
is for 3 years, so that requirement of absolute probably was felt by the regulator. Unlike
This
in
is
the
how
case
we
of
do
net
in
worth or
this is
turnover.
how we do in CSR. We take the
we
absolute
should,
numbers,
yes.
na? There is no word absolute used.
True.
correct.
that's
So
true.
I mean,
See, because
so because correct, I get your point. So I mean, but my view is more what Kishore has already mentioned.
Yeah,
See, the number one is they say absolute value. Otherwise, they would have simple said as in CSR in all other provisions that
Everywhere.
you take 2% of your net profit,
Net
right?
profits.
Yeah. So the moment they say that absolute value, which means you take the number of that, be it plus or minus, and the intention, according to me, is not to average it out, or in other words, not to net off. And therefore, and that's how you add it, and then you divide. So that's what I believe. But yes, I mean, I say this is how I interpret as an absolute value. Otherwise, we would end up having everything. For example, as we discussed already, the last parameter to be loss. Then everything, each and everything would get decided and then finally get disclosed. And that should not, and that will not always be the intention, because then we are talking about a small thing getting disclosed, and that will certainly not be the intention of SEBI. So
But
that's what I feel. But yeah, I
only-
think we need to have that clarification.
Yeah, but the only challenge is when we say we'll not net off, because you cannot do it without average cannot be possible. If you don't net off, you have to ultimately do a addition and division. So in its negative figures will get subtracted and get adjusted accordingly.
Correct.
So there is
Correct.
no reason the netting off will not be possible without netting off to get the percentages or absolute numbers or to determine the lower levels. Yes, in case of it is a loss, then definitely everything in part B is a material event. I don't think that should be the intention.
Correct.
Because for 1 year, I might be on account of some seasonal reasons, or their loss is triggered, and then you say it becomes material. But specifically, they could have used the word profit after tax. They've used the word
absolutely
profit or loss after tax. They intend to cover the figures, whatever they are in the financial statement, for all the 3 years. And then you do the average. But the result is, if you do the average and if it comes to be negative, but if you ultimately see a percentage cannot be of a negative value. So, for example, if your average profit
will also be negative,
you cannot be using 2% as a negative. But then, so ultimately, you have to ignore that. There cannot be percentage of a negative amount.
Ignoring
cannot be negative.
probably.
So they have not specifically mentioned net worth can be negative on account of losses. So they have specifically mentioned that negative arithmetics need not to be considered.
Yeah. Ankit, this is one interpretation somebody has mentioned. As per maths rule, absolute values of a negative number is positive number.
Yeah.
So that's what. Correct. So then, if in that example, as we discussed, the last number happens to be minus. We take plus number, the absolute value, and then you add it, and that's how you take average of it. We are not saying that average should not be there. Average has to be there, but then we take, for the purpose of that calculation, the plus number and not the minus number, which is, in other words,
so if out of 3 years I am in loss for 2 years and I have in profit for 1 year, so you say I only will take the profit for 1 year.
No, Ankit, I will just explain. No. In year number 1, you have a profit of 5 crore. Okay. In the second year, you have a loss of 3 crore. So it is minus 3. But you will take 3. Yeah. No, you will take 3. So 5 plus 3 is 8. In the third year, you have again a loss of, say, 1 crore. You will take 1. So then in that case, you have a 9 divided by 3. So your average is 3, and then you calculate into 5%, it will come out to, say, 15 lakhs.
But then that value 3 average of what we'll take that as a positive value.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's why absolute value.
Then ultimately loss is being considered.
Yes.
Correct. Correct. So that's precisely the reason they used the word absolute
word
value.
absolute.
Otherwise, they would have said only
Otherwise,
value or the number.
5 minus 3 is 2, minus 1 is 1. So 1 into 5% is nothing. It is say 20, maybe maybe
So profit-
20,000 or so.
so profit-
In that case, you need to disclose everything.
So ignore profit and loss, take after tax.
That is my understanding.
So now I think this is the
You can
understanding,
say so.
right? Because SEBI has mentioned absolute number. So absolute they have intentionally put in, and what is consensus of the other delegates are also saying, and the speakers are also saying that when you are taking number, you have to ignore the minus and take that minus figure as a normal figure.
So I think they have used absolute because they have used the word loss too. Otherwise, if they have used the word net profit, then I think they would have avoided the term absolute because they have used the word loss, profit or loss after tax. That is why they have taken the word absolute. So in order to that you don't consider it as a negative value, just consider the value, do average.
So now consensus is there that if there is a same example, 5 profit, 3 loss, 1 loss. So you have to ignore the minus point and you have to calculate 5 plus 3 plus 1 is equal to 9 and divided by 3. That is the average. Is it right?
That is my understanding.
I have the same.
I think
I would like to have
this can be
clarity.
the only
Maybe
way
we can write to SEBI.
I think we
also.
can write to SEBI. Yes.
Absolutely,
They may
yes,
come up
yes.
with
And get a point on
FAQs.
this.
Yeah, they may come up with FAQs.
But Anjali, when they are using word absolute, and this is the mathematical formula relating to absolute, so that may be understanding. So what we can write that this is the understanding. Please explain to us whether it is right or not.
If there is change, yes.
Okay. So I have few queries relating to this because people are also agreeing on this point that absolute mean ignore the minus point. Okay. One point somebody is asking that how will the entity determine materiality if all 3 criteria are negative? That is no turnover and no low turnover and has incurred losses in last 3 years.
It is the same.
Okay.
Like you
so
take
net
the
worth
turnover,
will be ignored. Turnover will be 0, and the last we discussed. So basis out of the 2, he has to consider because the lowest will be 0 itself.
Yeah.
Each and everything will become material.
Okay. We have asked this question that any other thing should be added. So one delegate has mentioned size of balance sheet may also be added as criteria for determining materiality.
No,
So
it's already there now. Its turnover is there, net worth is there, profitability is there, so it's already covered.
Yeah. So I think Vinod, you please clarify what is the meaning of size of balance sheet, because size of balance sheet will be counted on the number of pages or all these 3 criteria. So let's clarify this. So I'm just moving to other part and some few questions relating to this. One questions, Ankit, I'm asking you, then other people can also give answer. If company have no subsidiary, then we have to check standalone balance sheet figure for materiality criteria.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay. So now I hope that this point is clear. So we are moving to second portion, and then some other questions. If anybody has any doubt, you can write. Okay, over to you, Ankit.
So Savitri ma'am, Ankit, just a minute. Savitri ma'am has logged off for 15-20 minutes. She had some meeting. She'll join again. Yeah.
So the another important is that the regulation, if you see, it says the omission of an event or information whose value or the expected impact in terms of the value. So the question is, what is expected impact in terms of value? So whose value is this?
The transaction which is needed to be reported.
The event or the information, correct.
But where it is difficult to determine the value for any reason, quantification is difficult. So how you will...
Then the basic conditions contained in Regulation 30, where you can check whether this would be impacting the price or not.
I have a question here. It's not clear that...
Yeah.
Yeah, please carry on.
the materiality has to be determined by the KMPs or the board of the company. So accordingly, they will decide whether a particular transaction, if the impact cannot be determined, whether a particular transaction is needed to be disclosed under Regulation 30 or not. Any other views?
Vikas was making a point initially.
Yeah, I was saying that it's not clear that impact on what has to be seen. I mean, we would like to have examples on expected impact in terms of value. So impact on what, that looks to me a bigger question to me.
My understanding is that.
Yeah, Kishore, go ahead.
Yeah, please, Nikunj.
Go ahead, Kishore, go ahead. After.
My understanding is that if you have a value in hand while doing the information, while you have the absolute value, then in that case, that value, and if not, then in that case, you have to basically see the impact. Say, if I am investing certain amount in a plant and machinery, and that is going to give a, say, turnover of certain amount, which is coming into my materiality definition or the policy. In that case, my understanding is that I have to disclose that.
No, but in that case, Kishore, if you are doing something on plant and machinery, there must be a value of that plant and machinery itself. So what you intend to say that you will not consider the value of plant and machinery, but the impact it will create in terms of the turnover and other things?
No, see, the plant and machinery investment may be over a period of time. Okay, I have announced a capex where I am going to say incur the expenditure over a period of say 6 to 8 months. I have announced it today, but the impact will come after say 6 months or 8 months. In that case, I have to see that whether this impact is going to increase my turnover in such a way that it will basically come under the materiality, or maybe the product from that plant and machinery will impact a profitability in such a way it will come under that materiality criteria. So that is my understanding presently.
Ultimately, it has to be some bearing with the top line or bottom line.
I think so, because
otherwise it won't be of much significance.
Because for a company, it is only the top line or the bottom line. What else within? Organization is working only for the turnover and the profitability. But so the impact can be just based on these two things only.
Will it be fair to assume this interpretation? That is the question. Because unless
it
is clarified, it's quite vague. It's quite vague. Expected impact in terms of value on what?
But I think because the only assistance we have is it says whose value or expected impact in terms of value. So it has to be read in consonance with the event or information only. And the possible impact that information or event will have in case it is not quantifiable in terms of your top line or bottom line. That is the only way to read it. Because I don't think you will read it in terms of value of market price of your share.
Yeah.
Yes, correct. Because I mean that's the same sentence, right? Which it says that event or information whose value, which is if it is determinable, then that value. If not, then the expected impact of it, right? On the basis of the likelihood of triggering that particular threshold or the event. And that's what I think one need to make a judgment, and that's precisely the reason I think that honors has been always been given to KMP, and then eventually to board.
One another way, for example, on account of flood, there is a suspension of production. So you cannot. There would not be any value of that event flood per se. But out of that flood, the impact that it will cause in terms of your turnover, for example, it will impact 2% of your turnover or net profit. Then it may be a reason or basis to trigger the disclosure.
Yeah,
I think that can be the only reason. If the event or the consequential action of those events will result into any of the three impact, either bottom line or top line, that will be the only way to determine this.
Yes.
There is no other value you can consider, market value, market cap. I don't think that would be the fair things to do.
Ankit, while value would generally be certain and known at the time of the event or information requiring disclosure, expected impact in terms of value is to be determined on the basis of the likelihood of triggering the threshold. So what is the view?
So I think, sir, that is the same. So the expected value will be in terms of evaluated in terms of threshold only, but it will be not necessarily quantifiable at this point of time, or the impact is also at this point of time. The impact might trigger in a short period or in a times to come.
Okay. Okay. So can we the question which somebody was asking, size of balance sheet means total asset. So
Total assets.
The fourth point can be a total asset also that we were
I
asking.
think net worth, sir. Then
Sir, I think net worth is.
Net worth.
Okay. So Ankit, please proceed further.
So then going forward, apart from the materiality criteria, the timeline, there are some changes with respect to timelines. So currently there is a timeline of 30 minutes to 24 hours. 30 minutes is for these events and some other events outlined in Schedule 3. So the 30 minutes remains the same. They have not fortunately reduced it to 10 minutes or 15 minutes or 20 minutes. It continues to be same as 30 minutes. But on the 24 hours, there are some changes. So they have not divided this 24 hours into two events, two timelines. One is of 12 hours and one is of 24 hours. So where the event or information is emanating from within the listed entity, this is the exact word, then the disclosure has to be made in the period of 12 hours. If the event or information is emanating from outside the listed entity and eventually it is within, then the timelines are of 24 hours. So I've given a couple of examples with respect to board decisions, fire, suspension of production, and outside regulatory action. Do you see? Do you find any aberration in terms of the examples that has been given? Do you see there are any issues? One issue that we could foresee is a resignation by a director or auditor, for example. Will that be said as an event emanating within the organization or outside? For me, per se, it appears to be something within outside the organization, not within.
Outside.
I think it appears when they use the word within is something which is internal to the organization and where you have certain degree of control. Not necessarily control, like for example fire, you don't have control, but it is something arising out of the organization, or some decisions which are triggering inside. I think that would be covered under the period of 12 hours, and I think all others where you have no role to play in that entire situation, that will be followed by a timeline of 24 hours.
Right.
So,
Okay.
but from the industry itself, I think Nikunj, Kushal, or Kapil, do you see 12 hours itself would be challenging to meet?
Absolutely. I mean, I can blindly say yes, because in a large organization, information to reach to the right people takes time. Ideally, it should not be, and that's precisely the reason they put riders that if the information comes from within the company, better you manage it well and disclose it timely. But 12 hours is definitely a short period of time for sure.
तो रात के 10 बजे कोई चीज है तो सुबह 10 बजे तक का टाइम है.
Exactly. And that's not working hours, as you rightly mentioned. It's not working hours, right? So I mean, it's not working hours. So therefore, I think it's definitely challenging.
Okay, what about the 12 hours, 24 hours is irrespective of weekend, Saturday evening?
Irrespective of
Yes, sir.
It's irrespective of that, right? It's calendar hours, right?
Saturday evening I have received, Sunday I have to give reply.
Yes.
So all company secretary should be ready for working on Sunday also now.
So any issue, other thing I find in these 12 hours, 24 hours in terms of events emanating outside or within the organization, any you see there are any scope of interpretational issues arising out of it?
So there is one question, Ankit, which somebody has asked question also. If a show cause notice is received, so now your this 30, 12 and 24 has given three things. One is from the timeline for disclosure, and if the event or information emanating from within the company and then outside. So if some notice is received from stock exchange, so whether it will cover in the third part?
I think it will be within 24 hours. It is outside.
Outside.
Because the notice has been generated by someone outside the organization.
Okay.
Likewise, if a branch office of mine, say in way far in Andaman, has received an order contract. So like, will that be an event emanating within the company or outside the company?
I think it
My
will be
understanding
emanating from
outside.
outside. I think
Outside,
So,
outside.
my understanding
it
it
will be
would be
emanating from outside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So can we make it simple? Anything
Yes.
which board has deciding and board has in knowledge and doing this, it is 30 minutes.
Yes.
Anything
Right.
anything which is because you are deciding the board itself. But the example which Ankit has given, fire and suspension of production, it is board decision, but the information is coming from outside, and then the board is taking decision.
But it is within the organization, sir. Factory, these things are within the organization.
But you are not taking a call. Fire, there is a fire. You don't know at what time fire is taking place because it's not us telling you the
But
right.
it is an event within the organization.
So within the organization,
That's
For
why
that 12 hours. 12 hours for that.
Yes.
That is for there's a 12 hours, and something which is for third party, not connected to company, that is 24 hours. So this is one clarity.
Yeah.
And second is which thing will come. It is clearly defined. So 30 minutes, 12 hours, or 24 hours. No Sunday. You have to inform on the basis of as soon as you are receiving this information.
But sir, one thing is there in the discussion paper which was there of November 22, fire and force majeure have been covered in 24 hours event, not to 12 hours events.
Okay, and what about the litigation, petition under IBC, arbitration, invocation are eliminated?
All outside the
outside.
Okay.
Even for that matter, strike at the factory premises is also outside because it is strike by employee, not by the company.
But you won't consider employee as something within the organization?
No. So most of the time, this strike basically is not company-driven strike, right? It's against the company or the management.
Yeah. So there can be two examples. I think, for example, if it is driven internally only, if for example your company union per se, which is the company union, has done a strike, then I think it has to be read differently. For example, there are national organizations who call for a strike, and then your internal union laborers join those strikes. If that would be the case, I think, and when it is internal, we need to see how it has to be treated.
Because strike is something which they start with and they inform the company that now we are on strike, right? It is there at that point in time, company comes to the knowledge of that thing happening. And from that time on, it is external information coming to the company. So that's why I see that to be as coming outside the company.
So I think there are two criteria which is coming out. One is board meeting is taking place, and then all the decision of board meeting you have to disclose. Now there is a strike which you are telling. There's no board meeting. So that they are saying you have to disclose within 12 hours.
And I think what is important is because time starts in either case when you when you find out the event. So 12 hours and 24 hours, I think has to be read in a different connotation, because for example, you received a notice and there is a fire in the office at the same point of time. And you are saying for one it is 12 hours, for one it is 24 hours. I think the difference is when there is an action arising out of third party, you need to deliberate, you need to look into, understand, there might be consequences. Then they've given you a larger timeline. And internally, because that might have a larger impact itself in the first instance, and you have sufficient time to diagnose and react. So therefore, that should be the basis to determine the disclosure timelines rather than the other criteria, because
pointers.
Timelines is only trigger once you receive the information.
Okay. Another decisive factor can be a strike happen that can be disclosed within 24 hours, but then any further updates on the same, because now it is well within the purview of the organization. Any further updates on the same are needed to be disclosed within 12 hours.
So that is, otherwise you have to disclose it on a regular basis. The regulation itself covers. The position remains the same.
I think very clearly demarcation. If the board meeting is taking place, you are taking any decision, you disclose within 30 minutes. Rest of the thing you are disclosed within 12 hours. if the board meeting is not taking place?
Sir, even in case of board meetings, sir, only the events which have been outlined under the schedule 3, those needs to be disclosed in 30 minutes. Not all.
So which is the part of the board meeting, na? Which is agenda part of the board meeting. That's why I'm saying whatever mentioned in the board discussion, that you have to disclose. Remaining thing is when the meeting is not taking place and then something is happening. Achana, one question is there that if fire breaks out at 9:30 p.m. in the night and the company secretary is aware of the news only by the next morning, how will it be possible to disclose within 12 hours?
I think, sir, if it's a major
24
fire,
hours.
I don't see any reason why the company secretary would not be aware. He is
It
not
is
a company
24
secretary, he
hours.
is not aware of a major fire in the organization.
No, so major fire is there, so he has to send information from his house also, you mean to say?
Sir, wherever he will find out if in case it's a major incident, any major fire, the news itself spread like fire.
Ankit, if we look at the discussion paper, they have very clearly categorized the transactions which are needed to be disclosed, which will fall within the ambit of 24 hours or 12 hours. So anything which is happening outside.
But under the outlined amendments, there is no such distinction. They have only mentioned timelines. Events you have to identify at your end.
I mean, and I have the same view as Ankit has, just to add to what he said. I mean, in the given example, company secretary definitely has to inform to the stock exchange within whatever the time, maybe 12 or 24, because the information, the expectation clearly, coming from amendment is that company should have internal mechanism that information should flow to the people, to the right person, KMP within the time, and that is the expectation also coming from this amendment, right? So there has to be a mechanism wherein information flows, that is irrespective of the timeline, whether it's 9:30 or 1:30 in the AM, right? So that doesn't really make any difference. It has to flow to the right people or the committee internally established, and that has to be examined and it has to be informed. In the given example, yes, from 9:30 p.m. To whatever the 9:30 AM, that's the case. It has to be informed.
So one question is there that stock exchange is a regulator.
Sir, it's a state. There are a lot of judgments. It's a state, and it has some powers of regulating arising out of, because a lot of penal action is being taken by the exchanges itself. So it is a kind of a quasi-regulator. It acts on behalf of the SEBI.
Okay, let's ask Savitri. Let's ask Savitri. Stock exchange is a regulator.
Is ma'am there? I
can't. No, technically it is not a regulator. However, since the powers have been delegated to it by the regulator, it is a quasi regulator, and it derives its powers from the delegated power given by SEBI.
Yeah. Okay. Now few questions are there, so I'm just asking. So one person can give reply, because so many questions are coming. Branch is company itself. So why branch has received order is considered as emanating outside?
No, it is an order which is received from a third party. So even the order has generated from outside the organization. So that is why it is being treated as something emanating from outside.
Okay, sir, I would just like to add one point about this entire discussion of emanating within or outside the company. I think something which is voluntary being done by the management can be considered as emanating within the company, and something like Ankit mentioned, beyond the control of the company, can be considered as emanating outside the company. So likewise, that order received from the outside agency should be considered as from outside the company only.
See, I wanted to add one more point. I will just take you back where the materiality policy is there. There is simultaneously, you can say, obligation on the company to define a SOP, where the concerned, you can say, the relevant employees should be looped in like the plant head or the other people, so that the information flows from that person to the KMP in a very transparent manner and a timely manner. So there is very clear in this that if something you are discussing in the board, you have to give in 30 minutes. If the information is flowing from your company, if it is fire or anything, you have to disclose in 12 hours. If there is some regulatory action or maybe the letter you are receiving from third party, in that case, you have a timeline of 24 hours. So you have to, as a company, listed company, set up a SOP, involve those people, maybe the plant head, COO, and the HR head and other people who are involved in these things to disseminate the information as soon as they come to know about these type of things.
Okay. Okay. So now next question is, if some information notice is received when the registered office is closed for 2 days, then how to calculate 12 hours or 24 hours?
I think the day you receive, it will be
When you get to know,
it will be returned.
I think when one person is asked speaking, other person please. Okay, next. All these information to be shared within 12 to 24 hours only when such information is material.
Yes.
What about the event information which is not material? What is the time limit applicable?
So for non-material event, you need not to disclose unless you voluntarily wish to disclose them.
Anybody has different view on this?
No, same.
Okay. Okay. What is the role of company secretary in determining an event or information as material? What is the role in educating the director and employee under Regulation 30?
So there is this requirement to ensure that you keep people sensitized to this materiality of the company secretary.
Savitri, your voice is breaking in between. I think we have to make
Okay, let me log off and log in again.
Yeah. You do it. Okay. So now next is auditor resigned due to governance or handling things the way value was then it should be internal. I think this is external because
External.
yeah. Okay. In case of disclosure for acquisition, proposed acquisition or appointment of director, KMP has decided, approved by the board, will it be 30 minutes from the conclusion of the meeting or 12 hours? I think these are 30 minutes.
I think, ma'am,
30 minutes. Yeah.
30 minutes is only for those items which are mentioned in the schedule.
It doesn't qualify for 30 minutes because that list doesn't include that appointment of director.
It will be 12 hours.
No, but tell me something you are deciding in the board, which is not coming in the schedule.
I just want to clarify the 30 minutes, the schedule 3 itself outlines a list of items that needs to be intimated in 30 minutes, like dividend, bonus, except all those are required to be disclosed under 24 hours. So even if it's a board meeting and it's not an item which requires disclosure under 30 minutes, under the new regime, it will require disclosure in 12 hours, not 30 minutes or not 24 hours.
So in the same board meeting, I'm deciding.
There can be 2 items.
2 items. One is relating to schedule, one is non-schedule. Then I can do it. Okay.
Yes.
Next. Is audit, this is okay. If the notice of strike is given by the union, then why it is considered outside the company?
No, I said it can be treated as an event generating within the company, but still it needs further deliberation to understand the other nitty-gritties. Per se, it should be within because these are employees part of the organization. But I think Nikunj have and others have different views. So there's need further deliberation.
Okay, appointment of director, senior management within 30 minutes or 12 hours?
12
It could be within 12 hours.
If information emanates from outside on Saturday, whether to disclose on Sunday or Monday, I think this we have given answer. It is on Sunday itself. For Savitri, how will you, can you tell me, or I think all the person, those who are working in the industry, so if you are getting some information on Saturday and you have to send and this 7 o'clock on Saturday evening when office is closed. So 7 o'clock next day morning is the timeline. So Sunday 7 a.m. you have to send this information.
Well, Pavan, that's exactly the way it now would read, because if you refer to PIT regulations, there is a concept of working days, which is not the way it's defined in LODR. And also now it's more in terms of 12 hours. Of course, 24 hours was always there. So there's no distinction. And I would therefore say, yes, it would be Saturday, 7 o'clock.
Okay. So you have to make your office up now at ready at home also. Okay.
Yeah.
After COVID, there is no difference.
Okay. Somebody has given good suggestion. Why SEBI should not bifurcate Schedule 3 in 3 parts according to different timeline for 30 minutes? 12 hours and 24 minutes for better compliance. That's a suggestion somebody is giving. Second is, I think source of information is important. Strike by employee, the source is outside the organization. Hence, 24 hours is required to disclose. That somebody has countered this information which Ankit was saying. What types of notice to be covered for disclosure purpose? I think this is stock exchange. This is okay. Now, in terms of regulation 3011, the listed entity may on its own initiative also confirm or deny any reported event or information to stock exchange. I think this is next question. So I will ask that particular time. Okay. So because anybody wants to say anything in this, then we can move on the very important issue where everybody is puzzled what to do it, of the newspaper rumors.
So as per the new moving on, so one of the key amendments that are being brought in regulation 30 is with respect to the dispensation of or clarification on the rumor. So the regulation says, so if there is any reported event or information in mainstream media which is not general in nature and which indicates that rumors are circulating of an impending specific material event action in terms of the provisions of this regulation are circulating among us the investing public. In such case, the listed entity shall deny or clarify within 24 hours from reporting of such event. Before, just to discuss this, just mainstream media is newspaper, news channel, and publishers of news content and affairs like Daily Hunt, all news aggregators, in shorts, and all these are covered both within and outside India. So if there is a newspaper outside India regulated by their jurisdiction, it will be covered, and it's within India, it will also be covered. News channel and publishers of the news affairs and content. So now coming back in terms of the reported event. So this is the key requirement. So the applicability of the event is starting from top 100 entities from 1st October 2023, and then moving along to top 250 entities from 1st April 2024. For remaining entities, glide path will come in future. And the discussion paper only talked about recommending this for top 250 listed entities, but the regulation has started with the implementation on top 100 and then moving along to top 250 entities. And the one important point in the discussion paper, the clarification was required in basis the materiality of the event on the listed entity, and now they have changed it to impending specific material events circulating among us the investing public, which are material. So how do we can start with the
okay. Ankit, we can start this. Number one, first of all, how to ascertain where news is published to determine 24 hours. Now, the point is that they have covered the mainstream media.
I think, sir, instead of leaving it, let's first understand, or I think from the panelists, is what is in the idea of regulator to cover here, what they actually want to cover.
I think
what kind of events and news they intend to cover.
Let's ask Savitri, because she has discussed this issue earlier also. Savitri, what is your view that why the SEBI has brought out this point?
Sorry, what's your query?
That's on the rumor regulation disclosure.
Why SEBI has brought out this concept? What is the problem? And there are two things. One is why they have brought out, and second is the way they are saying all these channel, newspaper, and media. How practical it is to do this, and what companies should do.
So presently, what they've said is that anything which appears in mainstream media has also been defined, which is in very broad terms. And the perspective of the regulator is that if something is written, let it be very clearly clarified to the stock exchanges. So if you refer to Regulation 30, Sub-Regulation 11, earlier it was left to the discretion of the company. It was not a compulsory one. So normally the practice was, in case there was a query from the stock exchange, one would then clarify. But now they've shifted the onus onto the listed entity, saying that if anything appears, you need to clarify and ensure that you accept or deny. So what's important is it, is this event a material event or not? Could be a question, but to be on the safer side, anything that appears in media, you will need to give a confirmation or denial. Of course, from a practical standpoint, confirmation, until something has got confirmed, giving a confirmation may not practically be possible. But I think that's exactly what the ask today is, effective 14th of.
Okay. So Savitri has raised two important points. One is that any information which is in the market, so we have to see whether material information we have to deny or accept, or all information.
It is, as per my view, it has to be only the material information, because there may be certain news about, maybe the branding or other things also. On that, we need not to comment. But if there is some materiality, like some news about the acquisition, merger, or maybe some investment, in that case, we need to confirm. But the thing is that where it is circulating, how we'll come to know?
So
there's a separate part. Anjali.
Yeah.
What?
So as Savitri ma'am said, under the extant laws, the provision, the practice in exchange seeks a query and then the companies reply to it. But as per this amendment, now anywhere anything coming in, the company will have to reply to it, either give a clarification or a confirmation or a denial. So the mainstream that have been defined is newspapers registered with Registrar of Newspapers. We just did a Google search. There are more than 1 lakh newspapers registered with RNI. So, which includes small, big, financial, non-financial, regional, all sort of newspapers. So it is going to be, it's going to be a difficult task for the company to assess what is appearing there.
Anjali, my first question is whether any information which is material and given schedule should be denied and accept. That is first part. So let's have a uniformity on this and acceptance. Ankit, any information or only the material information you have to do?
I think that any information which may be material. Any information which may be material and out to be covered in any of the para A, para B or para C. They have covered almost everything. So it would be very difficult to find a thing which doesn't find its place there. It has to be something from there and it has to be material.
Okay, the language is not general, not in general nature. The language says which is not general in nature.
Plus, so what is the meaning of not in general nature?
Yeah.
And what is important is also the word Vikas said, impending. If you see, impending is something which is about to happen. So there is also a question on this, that it needs to be only of an event which will happen or which has happened.
Specific material event or information in terms of provision of this regulation.
Yeah.
So focus is on the materiality only, not all the information.
Yes.
So no, I think there is one more important point here. While we would say that only if it is material, the point here is when something gets published, whether it is material or not, is one where you apply your judgment and you're saying so. If it is broadly falling under any head, whether it crosses the threshold or not is one which will determine as to whether it is material or not. So you're applying a yardstick to say this, which also calls for a response.
Ma'am, another important thing is it says circulating among us the investing public. So you also need to ascertain that whether this event is actually creating any reaction among us public in terms of volatility on the market? How you will ascertain that it is circulating among the investing public? One can only ascertain if it appears to create any impact.
I think circulating among the investing public, while it is very clearly stated so, while they have defined the term mainstream media, and as Anjali was saying, RNI is registrar of newspapers in India, which monitors the titles based on the March 1 declaration, as it is commonly called, and they've not linked it with the ABC circulation. But what is important is, when you're saying circulating amongst the investing public, it may even be circulating among sections of public in a particular place. So I would actually go a little conservative there, which actually would mean that it's a very broad classification. And as to whether it is general information or material event or information, of course, if it is with respect to opening of an office, one can very confidently say it is not relevant at all. But anything else which has been picked up, one would have to see, and each event, one would not be able to use a broad brush to say it does not require a disclosure. One will have to see as to what has been reported, and based on that take a call. So while I would say that you certainly have a good ground to say it is not a material event or information, material event itself has not been defined, because materiality concept has been brought in terms of 225. So does it mean that only if that particular event is likely to exceed that threshold does it require disclosure? I think there's no guidance to clearly show that.
So it means that the SEBI should give a clear guidance, that rumor point of view, because sometime when rumor is there, it may not be material, it is not fulfilling the criteria, but it can be something damaging, something good also, something different also. So that clarification SEBI should give. That is one part. Now, second issue which everybody should understand, they are asking two things within 24 hours. And second, they are saying mainstream media. So the point is, first, we should understand what is the meaning of mainstream media and what are the newspaper covered in this, what are the sites can be covered, TV channel will be covered. Then we will talk about which newspaper is giving and how to calculate this 24 hours. So first question is how to identify. So Anjali, you were saying the RNI registration is more than 1 lakh. So which newspaper should be covered?
Yes. Likewise, the second parameter of mainstream media is channels which have been approved by Ministry of Broadcasting. If we look at that list as well, even that consists of almost 55 channels, which are online platforms as well. So my industry friends can tell this better, that how will they keep on tracking what all is coming about a particular company on any of those channels. For example, any of those investor platforms, they keep on publishing anything about the company, and then a detailed forum of discussion starts. How to rebut that rumor or information that is circulating in the media.
Yeah, but those forums need to be, I don't think those forums will be mainstream media.
They are, Ankit. They are in that list.
They won't be. Forums are not covered unless and until it is related to news or current affairs. Only those platforms which publishes any news or news affairs, current affairs content will be considered as mainstream media, unless तो फिर तो WhatsApp तो इतनी बड़ी university है.
Exactly.
So I mean that is precisely the reason.
WhatsApp is not covered.
So Ankit, I agree with you. I mean that's precisely the reason they said mainstream media, correct? And because otherwise, I think if the intention was to cover everything, they could have said social media and everything.
Media itself is sufficient.
Media itself is sufficient to cover everything.
Would just like to add one point. If we read the definition of mainstream media, it says mainstream media shall include. So it looks that scope is there to include even the other things also. Yes. It doesn't say that it shall mean.
Inclusive definition, yeah.
It's inclusive definition.
I believe it can include even way beyond what has been prescribed.
Absolutely, but I'm saying you need to, if you go obviously in inclusive definition, certainly it's open. but at the same time, you would go to the likes of what is included already, correct?
There has
And
to
that's
be
how you
some
take the judgment
some benchmark
in terms of the
yeah.
interpretation. So therefore, I think going by that logic, if you sign, and that's my personal view, that this social media or the discussion happening in some quarters will definitely not come unless those topics end up appearing in the mainstream media at some point in time, which is when comes the trigger.
Yes, it
for
will.
whatever
And
the time.
the fact that they have also used the word social media intermediaries in one of the item enlisted in Schedule 3, it's very clear they intend to exclude it from the mainstream media for the time being, and it will be Pandora box if we tend to consider social media platforms on mainstream media. Though it's an inclusive definition, but we have to read it in the context also.
Yeah, absolutely right. And for that matter, mainstream media will not include social media.
Okay,
So
so now the issue is not settled down. The point is, which are the newspaper, and Savitri, you are the biggest company in India. Now we can take test case from your side. You have an international operation also. So they are saying in India, outside India. So will you cover Washington Post? You will cover Wall Street Journal, every newspaper you will cover and see what are the news channel. Will you see this in India and outside India? So first, I think which information deny and accept, that's a separate part. First, we should identify that which are the channel and which are the media you have to cover and you have to see. Then we'll see what are the practical problem. So Savitri,
Right.
just tell me which newspaper, which channel, as per your understanding.
Okay, so that's exactly the point where you would interpret the term circulating among the investing public. So, any foreign media which is available in India, now given the fact that you have internet and also newspapers can be printed in India at several places also. So, if it is circulating in India, those kind of foreign papers, you will need to put them on the radar.
No, but how will you say? Because today, what is happening on your WhatsApp, you are getting newspaper of entire world.
That's right.
And that is coming on WhatsApp. You are through. So will it covered? And because that is reaching to investor, that is everybody is reading. I'm getting every newspaper of the world on my WhatsApp. So what? How?
I think for the timing, use Google Alert.
So, Ankit, to implement this,
you have to implement in the long run. You have to implement some systems, but as of now, there is no solution available easily.
No, I will come out this solution, but that is another second part. But first part is which channel, which newspaper. You are saying which is among the investor, but how will you define that among the investor? Now, all 5 pink newspaper we should take care, or we should talk about the Times of India or Hindustan Times also, which has a full page of investor news also.
They are current affairs news, so they will be covered.
So what is the limit? Some newspaper, there's a Northwest company, some news has come in South newspaper, which I'm not subscribing. What I will do? So the question is, there should be clarity. There should be clarity, like they have given the top 100 companies and 250 companies, same type. They should also disclose, for starting, you should cover following. Like people are asking, the money control will cover into this or not?
So it's a news intermediary. It will be most probably covered. They publish current affairs.
There are now thousands of money control type site which are providing information. Will it cover everything? And then there is another point is, some site is subscription based. So it means that company should subscribe all these sites and see this, because they are giving information to their investor, that is 10,000, 20,000 investor. So first question has to be very, very clearly demarcated, that when you are talking newspaper, which newspaper, and now they have talked about the international newspaper also. So this is very challenging. Now solution is there, that you can put Google Alert for all these information. So that channel will help, that media, that channel should be created, the system should be developed of IT based, where all the
Manoj just mentioned that there are agencies which do so on payment basis.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's right.
correct.
Should be tapping those.
And that covers all the media, print media, be it content, website, everything. So that runs obviously based on the code word of the company, and whatever comes there, that gets at the every morning it comes to your inbox. So I think that is the kind of service which eventually will find place to kind of tackle this compliance going forward.
Okay, so if I can summarize this particular problem, till the time you subscribe these people, but do you think that they are giving all the media, all the channels? They are also have a limitation.
Absolutely. I mean, every system will have some sort of a limitation, but I think if we have some sort of a system in place that will at least clearly, have our intention on a table that look, we want to cover everything. I mean, yes, obviously our mandate should be that we should know everything. I mean, everything what is there in mainstream media and not social media.
So now you require one more company secretary who will look after 24/7 this particular thing.
Corporate communication will handle this.
As
I think
they
we need
say,
to move. We are already short of time, and there
correct.
is stuff that we need to discuss.
So as they say, sir, compliance is everyone's job and not only of company secretary. So this is when we need support from them as well.
So Ankit, I think how to ascertain where the news is published, that is also important. How to calculate that 24 hours. And
I think, sir, once we determine the source, I think then the question will be able to find a solution. If identify a particular website that the news is originated from that website, then we can try to find a solution. But yeah, it will be a little challenging. So the other question that we are receiving from a lot of our clients also and from public at large, that what kind of systems should a company implement to ensure compliance?
I think this is the same way you have mentioned that Google Alert type of system will develop some news, various softwares are coming with which they provide this type of service, that wherever your name is coming, they will give you in your format.
That's the only solution. Yeah, Google Alert something.
No, not Google Alert. It requires higher system. Google Alert missed out some certain things. So companies are providing, that PR agencies are providing this type of service, so they can give this type of software for you, so all information can come.
So another important question is with respect to acquisition rumors. If you see a lot of companies when stock exchanges reach out to them, they come out with clarifications like speculative, company keeps on looking for opportunities. So if I say something like that, and after a couple of days I make a deal announcement, will the exchanges be coming back and asking me why you have not confirmed the same few days back?
So Ankit, I can pose this question like this. Whenever you are doing acquisition, you are doing subject to due diligence. Now, some newspaper publish that this company they are acquiring this company. You may acquire, you may not acquire. So this type of problem every company is facing. So what is the solution?
So can we deny and confirm simultaneously?
Can we deny and confirm?
Deny means that we give a vague reply in terms of we don't comment on speculative news, or we continue to look on for inorganic opportunities available in the market, and then 3 days down the line we make an announcement that we are acquiring a company.
There would definitely be another letter from the exchange or SEBI saying that 2 days back you had mentioned that there is no such price sensitive information available with you, and now you have given this information.
I think Savitri or Nikunj can give answer, those who are acquiring various companies, that how to handle this. So Nikunj, you keep ready your answer.
Yeah.
Savitri, can you just explain to us that how to handle this type of situation? Nikunj, till the time.
Actually, as was mentioned, this is quite a tough one, because at what stage can you confirm? Only when you actually have a deal on the table, where you do not have one each company will have to possibly take a hard look at it and take a call as to what they're going to be saying. Because if you're just in negotiation and nothing has got finalized, okay, one would have to possibly say that there is an opportunity or just a negotiation, it has not yet been finalized, or maybe you will have to completely walk away and say that there is nothing in hand. And in which case, subsequently, let's say, for example, in 2 days' time, the deal materializes, you definitely will have an issue. It cannot be such a short span. So if you have said no, if you have said that you can neither confirm nor deny, then you're basically saying that there is something that's going on or possibly not going on. But if you're required to specifically comment on it, you cannot say that you can neither confirm nor deny.
Nikunj, you have, yeah.
I agree. I mean, the same strategy one can adopt, because we can inform only when there are some triggers, as in, this that gets concrete. Most of the time, I would say, rumors goes out, before it gets concrete or it gets approved. So situation would definitely arise. This is where, as Savitri ma'am said and Ankit said, we need to be thoughtful in when we reply to them for the first time, clearly considering that. And even I would say, to that extent, that after 3 days or a week, we are at a stage that we go ahead and inform. Theoretically, on that last day when board can decide not to go ahead and acquire company as well. So theoretically, both the possibilities are on table until that gets decided in favor, right? So even if I would say, BAC may ask questions, obviously they will ask questions, but I think we will have valid reason to give reply to them, that why we have replied what we have replied.
But tell me, suppose you are saying denying, or no, you are saying no, or you are saying we are not confirming anything, and tomorrow you are finalizing the deal, then stock exchange is asking that.
Correct. So I'm saying, that's why I'm saying. So first of all, obviously in the first letter, I can't say no, definitely, right? Because if I have that thing in pipeline, that kind of a topic at hand, perhaps I can't say no to them. I may give them some hints that the company is considering as, on a regular basis, going growth and things like that. But I can't confirm till the time it gets approved. And then having given that, I would not say indication, but that kind of a reply, definitely when I can explain to them. Clearly not a great situation to be in, but I think this is how company to manage.
But you have to give answers. So I think what Savitri and
Yes.
Nikunj is saying, that you say neither deny, neither accepting. That is the only way which can save you from future acceptance and rejection.
Yeah, if you have anything at hand. Yeah.
Yeah.
Leave it to-
Naturally. Yeah.
Let's corporate communication manage.
Yeah.
But of course, I must also add, it again depends on the stage of your discussion. Because
Absolutely.
if it is at the final stage, you cannot say that you can neither confirm nor deny.
Yes.
I mean, if it has got more or less finalized. So it actually depends on the facts of the case.
I agree.
And
Savitri,
yeah, sorry, continue, sir.
Yeah, one question is it rumor, or it should trigger some market reaction? Because it's a combination of both, or it's a only rumor, and rumor should trigger the market reaction.
So actually, Pawan, market reaction is a very undefined term. So I would say just rumor itself would require an answer, because if you go by the provision, it says that if there is something, you're required to give your comments.
Okay. Ankit, next.
I think this is done. Then this is another requirement is with respect to the existing events, which becomes material on application of the new materiality criteria, and any event which is there under Part B, or Para C, or Para B, that needs to be informed if it becomes material as per the new materiality criteria within 30 days of the coming effect into the notice. That is 13th July, the notification will come into effect, and then 30 days after 13th July, within 30 days of 13th July, you have to do the intimation. So this is what type of continuing events will it cover?
So I think anything
Okay.
which has not been disclosed till now, but it is falling within the ambit of the three parameters on the basis of net worth, profitability, or turnover. As on 30, the issuance of this notice, that is 14th June, then that is needed to be disclosed by 13th of July, by next 1 month.
So what will be the answer of this?
If capacity addition was made in May
The capacity
23,
addition.
it will have to be.
Yes.
So how
If
far
it
we will go
impacts,
back? How far we will go back?
Correct. So
Maybe
that's a
It
debatable one.
says it is a continuing event. It says it is a continuing event.
see, post 1st April we can take, because for the balance sheet date, the listed company must have published their results and all that. So it must have been forming part of the footnotes if there has been certain material events, maybe in certain cases. So we can go back to maybe after closure of the financial year. So 1st April onwards, if there has been certain events and which as per the materiality criteria, we think that it is material. So then in that case, the listed company informed to the stock exchange. That
Any
is my
other view?
Pardon?
Any other view?
See, if capacity addition was made in May 23, which is well before this new provision came into effect, it would not become something which would require disclosure now. But as was also mentioned, anything which is continuing, in that case, let's say, for example, there is a further addition made, or let's say, for example, capacity addition, proposed capacity addition was covered in the media release earlier, but that has now become, that's now started production or something. Then maybe those will require disclosure. So there has to be something which happens new. There's an additional event which happens, or let's say, for example, earlier it was not material because the criteria was not specifically given, but now with little more being done. Let's say, for example, there was some event which had occurred, and now there's something more that is happening with respect to that, which makes the entire thing in combination a material event. You would be required to disclose. You cannot say that this was anyways disclosed earlier. So taking the same example, capacity addition, factory being set up, where there's little more happening now, you would be required to make that disclosure.
But ma'am, they are saying that the turnover, profitability, and net worth has to be seen as per the latest audited balance sheet of the financials of the company.
Correct.
So, to my understanding, continuing means anything which was there in that balance sheet, but you did not disclose because your materiality policy had way higher limits. But now, because of the new norms, you're falling within the ambit of materiality. So you will have to disclose within next 1 month. So that tomorrow, if you give an update to it, it is not a new thing for the industry at large, for the investors at large. And people are aware that this particular thing is a material event which is going on in the company.
So actually, this is, I agree with you conceptually, but the example of capacity addition, which had already happened and completed in May, need not be disclosed because it's a completed event. It's not a continuing event.
Maybe,
That
right.
discussion will have to be
Okay,
done.
fine. Yes. To
Yeah.
that perspective, yes.
I agree. I mean, in that case, the example would be some, let's say, litigation going on, which may not come within the threshold at that point in time, but now comes within the 2% fine.
Yeah, it can be, say, the investment, you have signed an agreement to invest in a particular company, or that amount is falling under the materiality. So that will also.
Okay, how about the contingent liability disclosed in audited balance sheet, which trigger hold limit?
See, we have to see the getting it the contingent liability getting into, you can say, into actual liability, if there is a possibility of that, then in that case, we have to see according to the materiality policy.
Okay, the information event need to be continuing in nature, one-off events having no long-drawn continuing impact is not required to be disclosed if the same occurred prior to the amendment regulation become effective.
Yeah, not required.
This is exactly what I was referring
Yeah.
to. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Next
for
is-
example, just to take it a little further, as was mentioned with respect to the investment. Okay, so if the investment criteria is getting met or breached, let's say, for example, investment which was made with the proposed investment exceeding. So, you have made X amount of investment earlier. Now, with a small minuscule portion, you are actually making the old event also liable to disclosure. You will be required to disclose it.
Okay. Ankit, next, because we have next point. Ankit, you have to unmute yourself.
I'll now move on to the events that have been either amended or newly introduced under the Schedule 3. So to begin with, so there is an existing requirement of disclosure with respect to the acquisitions, and there are certain criteria, like if you're acquiring control, if you're acquiring 5% or more voting rights, or there is a change of 2% or more in your existing investment on account of the acquisition, then you need to disclose the market. Now they have added that if irrespective of these three, if these three are not meeting, but the cost of acquisition is higher than lower of the quantitative criteria prescribed under Regulation 30, Sub-Regulation 4. Now that also needs to be disclosed. So in either cases, if there is no control, no voting rights of 5%, or there is no change. So in the only case where there is change of less than 2%, but the cost of acquisition is higher than the materiality threshold provided under Sub-Regulation 4 of Regulation 30. Now that also needs to be disclosed to the exchanges. I don't see there is any much challenge here. They have further added disclosures with respect to subsidiary was already there. Now they have added another leg, which is associate company. And they have issued added a clarification in terms of sale of subsidiary, because earlier it was only sale or disposal of subsidiary. So now they have further clarified. So any agreement, even now agreement to sale, or for shares or for voting rights so it has now covered both the things: an agreement, final agreement, a definitive agreement, or agreement to sale involving sale of voting rights or shares in a wholly owned company, in a subsidiary, or in a associate, whereby these three loses their status. So a wholly owned subsidiary loses being an wholly owned subsidiary, a subsidiary loses being a subsidiary, or an associate loses being an associate. Consequent to the sale, then there is a requirement of triggering the disclosure. In case, for example, if it is an only, I think it probably in case of a subsidiary or an associate where you are selling, and then the it continues to be an associate, it continues to be an associate subsidiary, then the quantitative criteria of also needs to be checked. And then because if it continues to be a subsidiary and continues to be an associate, the first criteria will not be met. Then the value of the sale has to be checked in terms of the quantitative criteria prescribed under Regulation Sub-Regulation 4. So in either cases, either it chooses to be subsidiary, wholly owned, subsidiary, associate, or in case of a subsidiary and associate, doesn't loses the status, but the value of the transaction meets the quantitative criteria under Sub-Regulation 4. Then also now the disclosure is required. So additional disclosure is required in terms of associate company, and further clarifications are provided in terms of disposal of stake in subsidiary when you need to disclose. Further, there are additional disclosures with respect to fraud and default. Currently, promoters and KMPs are covered whenever there is a fraud or default that the company needs to intimate. Now, subsidiary, senior management personnel, directors have also been included in this criteria. So if they are part of any fraud, then the disclosure is also required to the exchange. In case of default by director, senior management personnel, or subsidiary or promoter, thus default has to have some impact on the listed entity. In case it's done at their personal capacity with no impact on the listed entity, then it need not to be disclosed to the exchanges. When in case of default, it only needs to be disclosed when there is a impact on the listed entity on account of default by directors, senior management personnel, or subsidiary. They've also defined fraud. Fraud it's an inclusive definition. So fraud will also include the fraud as defined under fraudulent and unfair trade practices. In case of default, they have now very categorically mentioned that non-payment of interest or principal amount in full on the date when the debt has become payable, due or payable, then it will be deemed to be a default. So the default condition is now very stringent in terms of when it will be treated as default. So I understand that if you delay in payment of your principal installment or interest installment, even if there is a 1 day of delay, I think it will tantamount to default. Kishore from finance background can throw some light on this, how he reads it in terms of
a default for 30 days.
So, but here 30 days they have not used.
Yeah.
They have used, I think, 30 days in only the
Yeah.
revolving credit.
Yeah, revolving. In the case of CC limit, if you are
General,
overdoing
long-term loans.
In that case, if you are defaulting, so there is no, like, if you have defaulted today, you have to intimate. Or in case of NCD or interest, any type of loan, if you have defaulted, you have to do the disclosure. But in case of the revolving facility like the CC credit limit, so in that case, it has to be seen that whether the company has overdrawn that limit over a period of, and that above the DP limit or the sanction limit, the company is utilizing the limit. So in that case, that period is 30 days.
Anyway,
I think the issue will come.
you would like to add anything?
I think the issue will come in case of part payment of interest or the principal amount, because it says principal non-payment of interest or principal amount in full.
Yes.
Yeah.
So company can avoid this situation by making certain amount of payment, maybe.
No, that will also be a default.
How?
It is saying non-payment in full. You have to pay in full. Then only is there. It says default means non-payment of the interest in full.
Yeah.
So if it is 100, you have to pay 100.
Correct.
Yeah. So you have to pay the whole amount, either the interest or the principal. So you have to completely knock off the transaction.
Absolutely right, because this is non-payment in full. Means even if you've made a part payment, you are in default.
Yes.
This is very similar to the provisions of Companies Act, where it says non-payment of principal or interest or any part thereof.
Any part there. Okay. Disclosures in respect to arrest. So earlier KMPs, promoters were included. Now, similar to the fraud and default, they have included senior management and directors. So everywhere senior management personnel is being included. And whether that is in India and abroad, it need not to be in connection of the listed entity. If you have done any personal offense and you are being arrested, you also need to inform the exchanges in that respect. You will inform the company, and company will inform the exchange.
So here my query is, if there is a fraud which does not cover under the PF UTP, so in that case, what?
So it's an inclusive definition. So fraud will mean you have to refer the definition under the Companies Act.
Okay.
Changes in directors. So KMP directors were already there. Now senior management person. So every senior management person, any change, appointment, resignation, cessation for any reason, it needs to be informed to the exchanges. Resignation. Now this is also important. Currently, resignation letter of only independent director is required to be submitted. Now director, senior management, KMP, compliance officer, everyone's resignation letter needs to be submitted to the stock exchange. So now drafting of resignation letter will also become very important. You have to be very companies will see your grammar while recruiting you in terms of their resignation letter in other companies.
Naukri.com will have another service added to their
So this is a new requirement with respect to unavailability, or where director, MD or CEO become indisposed for a period of 45 days in a rolling period of 90 days. He fails to fulfill the requirements, and then it needs to be informed to the exchanges. I read many years back, there was a Harvard paper on how Steve Jobs' disease, how Apple kept it confidential for a long period of time, and it was disclosed very just recent to his final diagnosis. And then there was a lot of controversy in terms of whether that needs to be disclosed earlier or not. And there were other instances has happened across in various jurisdictions on similar lines too. So this, I think, seems to or intends to cover that situation only, where an MD and CEO is not available for a period of 45 days, need not to be consecutive. It can be intermittent on an aggregate basis in a block of 90 days. He fails to fulfill the requirement. So non-availability is not just the only criteria. He might not be available in the office, but he is also not able to fulfill his requirements, his role in the company as an MD, as a CEO. Then you need to, after the completion of the period of 45 days, or if you are clarity is provided on day one that he would not be available for a period of 45 days, then you need to inform the same to the exchanges. In the consultation paper, it was 1 month, not 45 days. Now here they have changed it to 45 days and in a rolling period of 90 days. So do you see any challenge in meeting the compliance of this new disclosure requirement?
Yeah, I mean, there is another question from my side as well. I mean, the wording specifically used is to fulfill the requirement of the role, right? So while MD may not be, let's say, available for a period of time, but he or she ensures that, you know, his role gets fulfilled by proper delegation, you know, through proper channel, and at the same time have oversight or some at some period of time, let's say weekly or fortnightly, while not being available for an entire day, right? What would be the situation in that kind of compliance requirement? Whether one should be really available, or one should really make sure that his responsibility is getting fulfilled by someone.
I think he is not there for 45 days where he's not able to exercise or fulfill his responsibilities. Okay. I think if he's doing so in your case within on a week's time for some reason, I think that period won't be considered, because then he's available. I think then you will only cover those periods when he was deemed not to be available. But ultimately, if he's available after 7 days and he tends to cover all what has happened, or he's outlined you for next 6 days what you need to do, he's in a way present.
Next, Ankit, next.
So multiple leaves on a rolling period of 90 days aggregating to 45 days.
I think this will not cover, because somebody has joined and then again going, it will not.
But he's not available for 45 days.
During 45 days continuously not available, then you have to.
It is not mentioned that it has to be continuous.
No, but this is the interpretation.
Otherwise, they have not mentioned a rolling period of 90 days. If it would have been continuous, they would have not given you a block. So because if you are not there in out of 90 days for 45 days, you are not there for 50% of the time, you are not there. It would severely, in general cases, it will severely impact.
But Ankit, if for any reasons, due to health reasons, say the person is not able to be there in the office, but otherwise he is taking care of all the responsibilities. As
then the question ends. The question ends because the qualification is you are not able to fulfill your requirement. If you are, for example, sitting from home and working, then it cannot be said you are not available. You are available.
Sure.
Work from home is also there, na? So somebody is doing work from home, that is also
he is available. He cannot be said he is not available. Unavailability means that he is not available for contact.
Reading finished.
Or for exercising his powers or functions under the role itself.
Even if some delegation is there, it can be considered as role is being fulfilled.
I don't think so. Delegation will cover. तो सब लोग delegation करके चले जाएंगे. I think when you are appointed as an MD, you are appointed as an MD in that the investor perceives you as an MD.
Yeah,
You
if he's
cannot just
available for the guidance,
delegate
available for the
that
guidance,
thing to some person and leave.
See what happens practically when in case of CEO or MD goes on a foreign tour, they usually give some delegation. We have seen it in quite a few companies that is happening. So maybe there becomes a case that the time period exceeds 45 days in a rolling period of 90 days. So I mean,
but
this is
he's
subjective.
available for the response, right? He's
Yeah,
available for the response if there is something,
Yeah.
and if you are contacting them, he's available, so that will not count.
And because the fact if he's on official tour
Yes.
per se, then he's already
Available.
part of the
Doing the job.
system, doing the job. So it would be considered he's not available.
So I think basically if a senior person is incapacitated, MD is incapacitated for any reasons, that would be a situation which would be covered herein.
That would be 100% covered. That no brainer.
I think we need to go with the spirit of the provision. And what is important is if the person is unavailable. For example, even when one is on leave, if you're in a senior position, you are more or less available. So when you're referring to unavailability, it basically means when the person is, possibly down with something, God forbid, so very serious that he is not able to connect with the team. That is the way one would look at this.
Okay, Ankit, next. Ankit, time is short. We have to just cover fast.
With respect to the disclosure requirements on the regulatory actions, with respect to search, seizure, investigation, imposition of fine penalties, sanction, warning, settlement, everything is required now to be disclosed without applying any criteria of materiality.
What about this notice received?
If it falls in any of the category, if it's just a show cause notice seeking some information from you, I don't think it would be falling under any of these conditions outlined there, because it's just a show cause notice. But if it's imposing any penalty, imposing any section, even it's a warning letter.
Okay. Ankit, my question, if a penalty is imposed by the stock exchange for any of the lapses of listing regulations, which ultimately may be withdrawn by the exchange, the company may go in for appeal or any waiver. So even this letter being issued to the company is needed to be disclosed. Imposition of fine or penalty means that only.
Items listed in material, though companies do take a view on those lines, but materiality para 8 doesn't give you any discretion of non-disclosure, whatever may be the final outcome. You see a lot of judicial pronouncements or regulatory authority orders are published by exchanges, and most of them carry that companies are evaluating necessary legal recourse, or companies they also give a forthcome outcome that they believe that would be there. But there is no discretion as such to apply your mind whether there will be, what would be the final outcome of the action. It may be positive, it may be negative.
But this provision per se is very harsh on the corporate.
Take that view in some cases.
Because without any test of materiality, each and every fine has to be informed, and it will definitely open the Pandora box.
And the important settlement proceedings also, because settlement proceedings is always for the secrecy that you got a notice you are going. So now you have to disclose that also.
Yeah, and there has to be certain limit on the fine. Otherwise, see, each and everything has to be reported, because the fine can be ranging from a very less amount to maybe the affecting the company also. So has to be quantified.
Okay.
This is also an important requirement with respect to the disclosures that are made by on social media intermediaries, by directors, KMP, senior management. If they are making any material disclosures on the exchange on these platform, which is material in terms of the materiality policy, and then it also needs to be disclosed to the stock exchange.
I think this is fair enough. You can't disclose anything on the social media or any interview, and then and you're not informing to the stock exchange. So that is a channelization, proper channelization of all information.
I think that most of the things, some to-dos that would be there in the part of presentation that we'll share with everyone. I have tried to cover other key events, but we are already short of time. I think we can take the questions.
I'm just one question. Somebody is asking that one school says that regulation 30 is about material event. Does para A also come under materiality?
Para A is deemed to be material.
Absolutely. It's deemed to be material.
Absence from work is what is meant.
Absence from work where you are not able, as ma'am said, that you are not available for any communication, anything, you are fully indisposed.
You are not discharging your duty.
I think you are not discharging the duty. That is the best way in place of testing the first part.
Yeah.
Okay. As per schedule, 5 particulars of senior management, including the changes, need to be given in annual report. Is it given in the annual report for 22 and 23 or given in annual report of 23-24 onwards?
Sir, if your annual report has not been approved yet, it has to be disclosed in 22-23.
Okay. If somebody is outside India for 45 days, will it be counted as absence from the duty?
No, if he's
Performing the jobs if he's
outside India, then he'll deem to be on duty.
Okay. What
more importantly, I think, today on duty and off duty, to put it very practically, is logging into your laptop or not logging into your laptop.
Okay. So what if CEO is not available for 45 days and 90 days, and then after 1 month he's again unavailable for 44 days?
You will have to update.
Yeah,
Huh?
ma'am.
Yes, Savitri?
Yeah, you will have to update once again.
Okay.
So, if you've already given, see, if you put a period, then you would have to update again.
Okay. So
The question is, the period is what is important. So 45 days.
But any meaning SEBI wants to say rolling period?
Sir, to determine effectiveness of you not being there, usse kya impact ho raha hai? That is why they've given you a block.
Any block of 90 days from any permutation combination, I think.
Okay. Is it mandatory to disclose within 7 days from date of resignation letter come into effect? So when it will be considered to come into effect? When it is accepted or when it is as its last date?
So generally we inform it as and when we receive it. Specifically in case of directors, there is no requirement of any acceptance.
But
the date of resignation.
But other people is a acceptance also, no? The management may or may not accept.
So there are two things. One is with respect to the disclosure of receiving the resignation, and other is filing the resignation letter. So if disclosure of resignation, it has to be in terms of changes and the KMPs. It has to be within 12 hours, most probably. And then with respect to the resignation letter, there is a period of 7 days that has been provided to you.
Okay. Default for non-payment of operational creditor and the demand notice is received from such creditor, whether disclose be made, or this is only for banking sector?
It says debt.
So it means I have a 10,000 operational creditor. So
I don't think, sir, when it says interest and debt, I think it most probably talking about financial loans from financial institutions.
It is about the loan. There it is about the loan.
So loans, whether you have
taken. It also talks about the credit revolving facilities. So intend to cover only loans from financial institutions.
So or whatever the NBFC or private bodies?
I think any kind of loan.
That will cover. Whether delay in submitting PF, ESI or filing GST return are covered, can we say that event is an ordinary course of business, need not be covered?
Under Part B, they have covered these things, I believe, with respect to delay in depositing PFs, I think fines and penalties. It might cover under Part B.
Okay, what about the fraud by employee as per audit requirements? You have to report?
If it doesn't fall under any category. there is no such requirement. But as otherwise, if it's a material fraud, because the fraud by other employees is covered under Part B. So Part B, it may be covered under the Part B, and considering the materiality, you have to disclose.
Okay, whether acquisition of shares would exclude treasury transaction? If yes, then where would be lot of disclosure?
No, for the treasury transaction, it is underlying basically operations. So it is in the normal course of business. If you are covering some hedge, if you are entering into some forward transaction or so it is basically to cover up your business requirement. So as per my understanding, it will not cover under this.
Somebody is commenting, just sharing, one of our CS fraternity member has said in the below public domain, too much information often lead to overlook the relevant information. On the other hand, SEBI proposal of coupling of meaning of unpublished price sensitive information under PIT with regulation 30 of the listing regulation will lead to such redundant information also required to be considered as a price sensitive information, having insignificancy, no impact on the price of the sensitive securities of the listed entity. I tend to agree with this point that SEBI, now the way informations they are asking, they must plan out, and in the stock exchange system, there should be separate columns. So investor related information or price sensitive information should be separate from the normal filing. Otherwise, it will be bombardment of information and more important information will go away. Sir, the PPT available on the website? Yes, you will get the PPT. Is mortgage of property considered as disposal under Schedule 3? And whether a stock exchange intimation is recorded on every event of mortgage of property?
No, mortgage is not considered.
Okay. Can any one of the panelists throw some light on the agreement covered in the clause 5A of para A of part A of Schedule 3 newly inserted?
So I tend to cover that, but because of paucity of time, we will be covering that in our next webinar, the monthly webinar that we have on regulatory updates. So we will be covering that there.
So something which is left out, we are covering on next Friday, or the first Friday of the month, where we are covering the updation of all the regulatory changes. Whether stock exchange are considered regulatory, statutory, or enforcement agency, because stockbroker who are listed entity frequently receive warning cautions letter from them. I think this Savitri has given answer to this question. Whether right to first refusal be considered as a special right to shareholder under 31B 1?
Yes, it will be.
Okay. Listed entity is a situation 1, listed entity is party. Situation 2, listed entity is not a party. What is the timeline for disclosure of substituting agreement falling under clause 5A, whereas listed entity is a party or listed entity is not a party?
Sir, it will be, because since it's a material agreement event, it will be has to be disclosed within 12 months or 12 hours or 24 hours, as the case may be, of entering into the modification in the agreement.
Okay, Mr. Ankit, are we supposed to define who should fall under senior management grade and notify to stock exchange after getting board's director's approval? Because that's a...
There is no such need of informing. This is something, an exercise which you need to do internally.
But sometime somebody is resigning, which is important. So how can you define? So
you define that everyone defines its own senior management personnel. And with the recent changes, companies have defined in terms of hierarchy who will form part. So if someone is falling part in that criteria, you have to disclose to the exchanges even as and when there is any change.
I think clarity is there. We need to define who are the functional heads. Apart from the functional heads, other things look quite clear to me.
See, I have to add one thing. Already we have a code of conduct. As per the listing regulations also, you have to frame the code of conduct where you have already taken care of the SMP. So maybe the major things will cover up from there. Then you have the insider trading code also. There you have taken the functional head and other things who are basically, you have the access to the unpublished price sensitive information, UPSI. So maybe those type of people can be covered in the policy while we are framing a materiality policy as per the amendment.
Okay, one interesting suggestion somebody has given. It is a time that SEBI should ask the media house to disclose the source of information about the company with documentary evidence. the media house should be taken to task if a company denies a report. These will bring an orderly, responsible media report on the public platform. That's it. So nobody can control media. So, but SEBI can ask if some information. I think this is also very challenging. Like somebody placing a news in the news channel, and then market price is fluctuating, and there is no reality on this. So, and the company is saying we are not connected to this. Then SEBI should ask the media house who has given this.
Yes.
Otherwise, media house can do some type of manipulation. That is also a good suggestion which SEBI should consider. Does that make sense to cover event only after 1st April 2020 as rest are part of the financials?
Not clear. Question is not clear.
If this is challenging, company has to either deny, confirm, or clarify. If the information is
comment, I think.
I think we have covered. SEBI will test this. This is also covered. Social media is alternative news media. Is it right?
No. It might be otherwise, but under the LODR regulation, it has not been considered as such.
Okay, how to demarcate the volatility in the market because of rumor or otherwise?
Fluctuation in price, volume.
Yeah. So he's saying it this was the rumor or any other reason. Suppose market is going up like today, market was 400 point up, and so it is because the market or this is a rumor. So how will you differentiate?
That's for every company. The index per se was on a higher side. So it will not form part of any such thing will not form part of the rumor.
Yeah. Could you invite SEBI official for clarification? Yes, we will in the next webinar, we will invite. And these all questions which you have given where there is no uniformity amongst the panelists, and there is a uniformity of the panelists, but we will send it to SEBI that this is our interpretation. If you want to say anything differently, we will definitely refer it and give it to you all, give it to all the panelists, all the participants also. I think we have received more than 140 questions on these things, and though various panelists has also raised, so we have to stop here. We are already crossing 10 minutes, and Savitri is looking like a teacher now who is finalizing the examination papers the way she is managing. So I think we have to stop here. So friends, what we have tried to give answer of all the questions, but
I will need to log off. Thank
Yeah.
you very much for a wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you, Savitri. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have tried to give answer of all the queries, but some questions are unanswered. Some questions are really not clear to interpret also. So all these things will make, and we'll make a FAQ type things. We'll circulate to all the participants also, and first we'll circulate to all the panelists so that we can take their view and then refer it to SEBI for further clarification. And in the next webinar or next to next webinar, we will call them with all these points where there's no uniformity. So I thank you, everyone. As per ritual, we are asking last comments for 30 seconds from all the panelists relating to this topic. So I will start Vikas. What do you want to say?
Sir, first of all, thank you so much for this opportunity. I would like to say two things. That one is after that recent consultation paper on review of definition of UPSI, whole the things are going to become even more complicated for the corporates as well as for the professionals, because all the events we are discussing today, we are discussing only regulation 30. But if that approves, that will also become part of UPSI, and whole lot of exercise will require to be done. Secondly, the kind of exercise SEBI is expecting from the corporates is already overwhelming. Especially the clause regarding certain information within 30 minutes, because it has its own practical complications. So that is from my side.
Nikunj?
Yes, so thank you very much, first of all, corporate professional, Pawan Kumar, Vijayji, Ankit, and Anjali for inviting. It's great to share our view along with co-panelists. But yes, coming to your question, yes, obviously, I think this, I would say broadly speaking, these amendments are in right direction.
What we need clearly guidance from SEBI is clarity on so many topics, so that we effectively, apply and rather comply all those things and all those requirements timely without any ambiguity there. So therefore, no problem going forward.
Okay. Kishore.
Thank you. First of all, thank you to CP team for inviting me to share my views on this topic. And I have only one thing to share is that there are certain things still which is has to be cleared, like we discussed on the fine and all that. So, and apart from that, we have to train within the organization also certain SOP, we have to set a SOP also, so that the timely information flows to the KMP and the disclosure can be made. But see, as far as the uniformity of the disclosure is concerned, it is a good step, like all the companies will be disclosing. So that's my view.
Okay, Anjali.
We as compliance officers have heard this word letter and spirit. So I think this amendment is virtually the further step of that only. We just don't have to comply in letter. If we can prove our intent as well to SEBI and to the regulators as to why we complied a particular thing or we did not comply a particular thing, that would go a long way in making timely disclosures. That's the reading started.
Okay, Ankit.
I think first of all, thanks everyone for being here. It was such a fruitful discussion, and I'm glad I'm not in the positions of Nikunj, Kushar, and Vikas. It's a both interesting and terrible time to be the compliance officers of listed entities predominantly. But I think what is important, sir, as Kishore mentioned, we need to build systems in place and to ensure that people at root, working at root level, branch offices, regional offices, they are made aware in terms of what needs to be taken care of, what they need to pass on to the head office, and proper systems has to be there. Without which, it's impossible to ensure the compliance of these so onerous requirements.
No doubt, Ankit. Now the companies which has a multiple offices, multiple branch, international operation, and with all these information, every company has to prepare now the system and procedure. And system and procedure manually cannot work. You have to take advantage. You have to use some technology which can helpful to you, because the newspaper and channel rumor information you cannot use until there is a systematic information. And second is, whatever is left out, that is also important. Tomorrow you can show it to the SEBI that I'm using this and this information has not come on my system. Otherwise, there will be no defense mechanism. So you have to make an audit trail also and then use it. So friends, happy, more compliance, more system, more procedure in the coming days. And specifically, those who are working in the company, they have a tough time, no doubt. And now you have to set up your office at home also. And on Sunday, you have to work also. So I think whenever you are leaving your office, you must ask everybody that is there any information which has to disclose, or you have to send a notice to everybody, that email to all the branch offices, all the center, any information like this, and they have to inform you. Maybe. So things will develop. Because SEBI is working out for the benefit of the share investors. That's why some tough calls they have to take. And this is not in India. Internationally, if you SEC, you will see, you'll find they are more tougher than us. And they want everything on this, and otherwise their penalties and things are more tougher. So thank you very much, friends, for participating. All thanks to Savitri, Kishore, Nikunj, and Vikas, Anjali, and Ankit. Thank you very much. And Ankit, this presentation, please send it to the all.
We'll share, as usually, we'll share with everyone.
Yeah. So friends, thank you very much. This journey of knowledge sharing will continue. Now our next webinar on next Friday, that is 135 webinar, 5th webinar on regulatory updates in company securities and insolvency law. And I'll request everybody, whatever it is happening from last Friday of last month's first Friday to this month's first Friday, whatever new changes in company law, security law, FEMA, insolvency, we are covering, and the important case law we are covering. So this is one opportunity. If you have not studied certain things, this is the time you can read. And we are just planning to give what is the present and what is the future changes in this, and what will be the impact on this, and how you prepare. So that is a very interesting session. I request everybody to join. Thank you very much. Thanks to all, everyone, and all participants, those who have come in big number today. There are 550 people have joined today. Thank you very much.